Welcome back to the ETF Inspector. It's Wednesday, November 5th, a little after 8 o'clock at night, and this is our daily recap video for our 3 YieldMax weekly paying funds: ULTY, the Ultra Option Income Strategy Fund; LFGY, the YieldMax Crypto Industry Portfolio Option Income Fund; and SLTY, the Ultra Short Option Income Strategy Fund. As always, I'm on X at ETF_inspector. If you don't already follow me on YouTube and X, please do. It helps the channel out, doesn't cost you anything. I post all things related to the videos I make and the ETFs that I cover, and even other ones that I don't cover. All right, it was a little bit of a recovery day in the market today from yesterday's bloodbath. Definitely not getting back everything we dropped, but ULTY showing up 0.83%. We'll go through the individuals when we get on our spreadsheets. LFGY up over 2%, 2.1%, and SLTY, you saw it marked green on the thing. It is true, but I'm gonna tell you it was most likely a trading issue, like a very low volume, like nobody happened to be selling or buying or something except for a couple people, because as you can see, the market was green today. Everything was green, and I'll show you on the spreadsheets as well. SLTY lost money today in every way possible, so there's no way for them to have gone spiked to the positive at the end of the day. That's going to be basically a liquidity. That's the word I was looking for. Not very much liquid shares, low volume, and just a last second. Somebody probably put a market order in, and someone else probably only had a high sale price. So SLTY definitely should not have been up, and so don't be surprised if you're down from that. And I do see it went up after hours, but I'm going to tell you, like they lost money trading and they lost money share value wise, so there's no reason for it to go up other than a trading error. All right, we'll start off with ULTY. What was it? Somebody used the word, I used to call it ULTY underdogs, but I kind of like was saying that as we were tearing through things. Now we're getting our teeth kicked in, so we really are more of an underdog, but somebody called it, I can't think of it, ULTY Anonymous. So welcome to ULTY Anonymous. All right, trades for the day. Starting off, we trimmed our positions in Robinhood and Rocket Lab. Didn't completely sell out at all, just trimming our positions. And then Upstart, we did sell. So we sold all our shares of Upstart and closed out all our options. So we're done with them. Then we get into the options trades. We're closing and rolling. At this point, for the most part, it's going to be till next week. Bitmine Immersions first up. Rolling the next week brought in just under $1 million credit. Cypher Mining cost $4.1 million on the close and roll to next week. Cypher was up, even though the market was down recently, so those calls ended up in the money. Coinbase rolled to next week as well, $1.6 million credit. CoreWeave, almost a $3 million credit on their roll to next week. Galaxy Digital, this is one of the put spread only. It doesn't have any shares to go along with it, but so they dropped and did not recover, so it cost a lot of money to close those out because of the sold puts. $2.7 million debit rolling to next week. Robinhood, this is just closing out the quantity of contracts that went along with the shares that were trimmed. It's not a complete roll, or not a roll at all. It's just close out. That actually brought in $100,000. Iron, this kind of ruined our day. Almost $14 million loss because they were up well beyond the strike price. I believe they may have been the big gainer, the big winner today too, that we were had to pay a whole lot to close out our calls. Palantir, just adjusting the strike price, still staying within the same week on our sold calls, brought in $968,000. Quantum Computing, $4.5 million credit rolling to next week. Rocket Lab, $5.4 million credit rolling the next week. SoFi, $765,000 credit on the roll. And Upstart, this is closing out all the options to go along with, because we sold all our shares, and that's your protective puts in action. You see buying to close the calls cost pennies, selling those protective puts brought in millions, $4.1 million overall. So kind of almost broke even when we're talking about a multi-billion-dollar fund with millions swinging each way, and we end up $728,000 to the good for the options trading. That's going to go along with $57 million increase in the value of our shares. So nowhere near recovering from yesterday. Well, we can call it recovering from Monday. So we still have all of yesterday to recover from. All right. When we switch over to our holdings, we've got Affirm up just barely 0.15%, calls at 74, still 3.5% out. BitMine Immersion up 4.8%. They took the win on the furthest out of the money calls, still have the 44s in play for Friday, 6.3% out, and they still have some puts sold to help pay for the protective puts. Cash, there's $105 million in cash and another $302 million in government obligation funds. So decent chunk, $400+ million on the sidelines. Cipher Mining up 9.77%. This was one of the ones that really stunk because half of our contracts were actually already in the money. So every bit of that did not help. Fortunately, that's only for half, though. The other half are still out of the money at $25.50. 3.2%. So we did get to, we got to capture that up, about half of that up move. So not the worst case scenario. Coinbase up 3.9%. Calls 335 are still 4.9% out. The further out ones got rolled, and then they actually have puts sold for next week that are 2.9% out at 310. CoreWeave down 1.1%. They rolled their sold calls and one of their sold puts. They still have their 112 sold puts in play. Galaxy Digital, we already said those got rolled. That's a put spread. Hims and Hers, 2.2% increase. Calls at $48.50 and $49.50 are still nearly 10 to 13% out of the money, expiring Friday. Robinhood up 4.1%. Like we said, they trimmed their position and closed a small amount, but they still have their calls at 155, 8.7% out, and their puts at 120 sold, 15+% out. IREN, this one's frustrating. Somehow the market tanked Monday and Tuesday, and yet these calls were still way in the money. So when they had this enormous 14.6% increase, we were already in the money and just went further. So the only thing we can see if we opened up that upside, let's see, 76 is $13.41 in the money on those 63s. What did we pay for them to close them out? 10. So they definitely earlier in the day closed those and rolled them. So we did actually get to capture some of that upside. So that's definitely good job on that active management. A lot of people are complaining that they're not actively managing. They were actually able to capture upside on an underlying where their calls were all completely in the money. So good job on that. Lucid up 5.3%. 1850 calls are 7.3% out. 1450 sold puts are 15, almost 16% out. Lulu had a nice increase, bringing that put spread back out of the money just barely by 9 cents. MP Material Corp up a fraction, 3 cents. Calls at 61 and 65 are still 11 and 18% out. Then we have 3 sets of put spreads in a row with no shares to go with them. MicroStrategy sold puts at 250 are almost 2% out with a 3.2% increase today. Netflix puts at 150 are 4.4% out after a 0.5% increase. And Oracle, this one's new, $240 puts are 4.1% out of the money after a 0.86% increase. Palantir, sorry, I've got to click something here. Palantir down 1.5% today. They adjusted the strike price on these sold calls. Quantum computing up 3.5%. Everything got rolled. Rigetti up 6%. Got to capture all of it. 41s and 4150s are 10 and 11% out of the money. They've also got sold puts at 11.5% out at 33. Rocket Lab down 0.25%. Everything got rolled with the exception of these protective puts at 56. That doesn't make a lot of sense. I think it was there's just a portion that are still in play. New Scale Power 6.4. New Scale Power 6.4% increase, way out of the money. 20 and 21% on those 45, 50s, and 46s. SoFi up 2.3%. Everything rolled. SoundHound up 3.9%. 18s and 1850s are still 14.5 to 17+% out. $13 sold puts are nowhere close either. Symbotic up 3.27%. Calls are sold at 80 and 84, 2.5 and 7.5% out of the money. Puts are sold at 65 and 67, 14 to 16% out. And Upstart was the big loser today, down 9.7%. Everything got closed out. Let's see if they got a better price than where it ended, 41.75. They did not. They sold at a lower price. So that's rough. But that's how you had a $57 million increase in the value of the shares of the fund. $2.3 billion in assets under management at the start of the day. People bought the dip yesterday. 9,750,000 new shares purchased, bringing it up to 495,250,000. NAV at the start, also because of the today being X day, so the difference between yesterday and today took the distribution amount out of the NAV, so bringing it down to 467 before it moved up to 4.7% on the day. Next we have, not SLTY, next we have LFGY. No shares traded here, so it's just options, and we've got a lot of just selling more call spreads, so we won't go into each of those miniature trades, sometimes 4 contracts at a time. So complete closeouts, though, we do have marked in orange. Bullish is the first one. They're rolling to next week, brought in 105,000. Circle Internet Group is next, rolling to next week. Let's see. So they sold a little bit for this week before closing it for a penny less, whatever. But rolling the next week, brought in 126,000. Galaxy, now they won their trade over here on LFGY with Galaxy, even though they lost the trade over on ULTY because ULTY was selling puts and LFGY selling calls. So that brought in 141,000 rolling the next week. Mercado Libre, $80,000 credit on the roll to next week, and Riot Platforms, $195,000 credit rolling to next week. All in all, it was a $526,000 trading profit on the day for options and a $5 million increase in the value of the underlying shares. So again, not even half of the recovery from yesterday's drop, but it's going in the right direction. We switch over and look at the holdings. Bullish up 5.6%. Again, these got rolled already. BitMine up almost 5%. $43 calls are still 3.8% out. BitDeer up almost 3.5%. $23 calls are still 4% out of the money. No cash, negative 700,000. Government funds, though, they got 4.5 million. Cypher, big winner, up 9.7%. Unfortunately, they were already in the money and went further, so we didn't get to capture any of that upward move. I mean, yes, it did increase the value of our shares by that amount, but it will have also increased the cost to close out the calls by that amount as well. So we're not going to get that nice $1 million increase. Clean Spark up 2.2%. 1850s are still 11% out of the money. Coinbase up 3.9%. $330 calls expiring Friday are 3.3% out. Core Scientific up a little over 0.25%. 2250s are 3.2% out of the money. Circle Internet Group up 1.6%. Everything was rolled. iShares Ethereum Trust up 7.4%. Still another 3.5 to go on those 27s, so they got to capture that big move. Galaxy Digital, we talked about it, up 0.8. Everything rolled for a win. GameStop up 0.14%. Still 4.5% out of the money on those $23 sold calls. Robinhood was up over 4%, another 5.2 to go on their 150s. Hut 8 Corp was the big loser, down 2.3%. Now, fortunately, I think last week they trimmed that position, so nice to have trimmed it before it became the big loser. Not that 2.3 is that big of a deal. $55 calls are 17% out of the money. IBIT. So I got to speak with the people at YieldMax today. If you've been watching these videos, last week we sold all our shares of iShares and we bought these deep in the money calls, these $10 calls expiring 12/19. And so what I got to verify was some of the tax loss harvesting that is the strategy that's built into some of these funds. So what they got to do was sell their IBIT shares at a loss, and that loss goes against some gains to offset them, so to help with taxes. And then since you'd have a wash sale rule if you bought back into IBIT, surprisingly, I guess you can buy back into deep in the money calls of IBIT, which basically represent having shares. So that's exactly what they did with that right there. But IBIT was up 3% today, taking their sold calls at 58.50 into the money by 0.7. Mara up over 3%. $19 calls are still almost 11% out. MBTX. This is that put spread dated for the end of the year, buying the 255. So yesterday they were down, I forget if it was in the 230s or low 240s, but as you can see, it was getting to the point where these were really seeing some value, more than $8 million difference in value. So that was the most valuable they've been ever since they opened it. Today it moved up some, so those are going to shrink in value a little bit, but they are still in the money, 3.8%. Mercado Libre down 0.17%. Everything rolled to next week. Strategy up 3.25%. Still 2 and 5.8% out on 260s and 270s. Oh. NU Holdings up 2.13%, taking their $16 calls, 1% in the money. No action taken. Nvidia down 1.75%. Calls at 205 and 207.50 are 5 and 6% out of the money. Opera up almost 6%. Still another 11 and call it 25% to go on 16s and 18s. They are dated for the 21st of November, though. Kind of surprising they didn't close them out when they were only 7 cents yesterday, but we'll see. PayPal, 3% increase, 2.8 to go on their 70s. Riot down 1.5%. They rolled all these positions to next week. SharpLink Gaming, SBET, 3.8% increase. Their $13 calls are dated for this Friday, 7% out of the money. And Blocks up almost 1.5%. Calls are sold at 77, still 4.5% out. So all those upward moves with just a couple of downs resulted in a $5 million increase in the value of the shares. Average sold call is still 7+% out of the money. We did forget to hit on that on pretty much the same. Average first call is still 7% out of the money on ULTY. Second call's 11% out of the money on average. LFGY, since all they do is sell calls, I just average all the sold calls together. Now that doesn't make sense. I forgot to. There was a day or two where they didn't have government obligation funds, and so it was just cash. But they're back now, so the dry powder fills up more. $219 million in assets under management. Yesterday, people bought the dip on LFGY as well. 100,000 new shares, bringing it up to 6,575,000. NAV at the start of the day, 33.39, closing at 34.08, basically making up the distribution difference and then some in the first day. All right, and finally, SLTY. So SLTY began shorting Robinhood, AppLovin, and Expedia, and they've closed out their shorts on Kratos Defense and SMCI. So I do remember when they just recently started shorting SMCI, and people kind of got up in arms a little bit. I got a little nervous too, but then I remembered that they said, this fund is short-term plays, so most likely it was a earnings situation. So this was on the 30th. They began shorting SMCI, selling the shares for $51.44. They bought them back today for $42.98. So they did a great job there, getting that correct. So they're in and out. Didn't think they were going to do well on earnings, and they were correct. SMCI had a rough earnings announcement miss. Now, when I pulled this up before I started the video, there was different articles that popped up, made it real nice and easy to hit some headlines. But let's see. Mixed outlook, stock is falling, underperforms when compared to competitors. So they didn't do well. So a nice quick play. Okay, then we start trading options. And we've got AppLovin. We're going to start the reverse collar strategy that brought in 19,000. Circle, this is rolling to next week. That cost 52,000. Expedia and Robinhood, starting the reverse collar strategy on them, bringing in $17,000 and $20,000. Kratos, we're closing out our option strategy because we are done shorting them. That cost $73,000. LEU, that's starts with an E or a C. Centrus, CE, I had it. Centrus, still not used to that one. Cost $61,000 to roll to next week. Moderna cost $68,000 to roll. SMCI cost $84,000 to close out. SanDisk brought in $30,000 on the roll to next, or on the roll. I'm sorry. $30,000 was brought in on the closeout. What's happening? So they just closed, bought to close their sold calls. So they're not always going to sell calls, and then they just adjusted their protective calls. So that brought in $30,000, and UUUU, it's another energy fuels, cost $104,000. So that means a lot of these dropped well below their strike prices. That's why they cost money to close and roll. And so this is why I'm telling you that was just a trading error at the very end of the day on SLTY. Everything they own as a whole dropped in value by $556,000, and trading wise they lost $355,000. So there's no reason for the stock price to go up other than a trading error. Okay, we've gone through. So these guys don't deserve the same kind of time frame. There's hardly any money in this. So they're shorting AMD, APLD, ASTS, I'm gonna just start saying them. BitDeer, Circle Internet Group, Credo, Carvana, Enphase, IonQ, Centrus Energy, Lemonade. They were the big gainer today. Man, it's a shame in a short fund to pick the stock that went up the most, 34%. So as you can see, that hurts a lot if you shorted something and it has a historic day. They're also shorting Moderna, Nebius Group, Qualcomm, Reddit, Riot, SanDisk, and Energy Fuels. They do not really have a lot of room for things to move down, a third of 1%, as the market still hasn't quite come back anywhere near what it dropped yesterday. Just about 21 million in assets under management at the start of the day, 550,000 outstanding shares. Nobody bought into or sold out of it yesterday. NAV at the start of the day, 38.05. Like we said, it ended up closing around 38.34, but just unless there's a huge market drop tomorrow, don't be surprised if that SLTY price ends up a lot lower. All right, that is all I've got for you. So we'll get a dad joke and get out of here. So thank you for watching. Appreciate all the likes, shares, follows, comments, all that good stuff. And so here is your dad joke. So not enough people are talking about the benefits of dried grapes. It's all about raising awareness. All right. Have a good night. Good luck trading tomorrow. I'll catch you in the next video.